Welcome to TestTrue, your go-to hub for professional knowledge sharing. In this video, let's explore HTTP and HTTPS. In my last video, I briefly touched about web APIs. What are web APIs? Web APIs are the interfaces accessible over the web via HTTP or HTTPS. Web APIs are essential for the web services to connect to other applications and provide the data to mobile and web platform. Today, around 70 to 80% of the APIs are web APIs. What does it mean? It means that these APIs use web or internet as a channel for communication, and they solely rely on HTTP or HTTPS protocol to establish the communication. Therefore, having a solid understanding of HTTP or HTTPS is very crucial and must for anyone who is working with APIs. Let us further understand the concept of HTTP and HTTPS by using weather application as an example. In this scenario, the weather application sends a message to a server asking for the weather information for a specific geographical location. This message is known as a request in the world of API. The server receives this message or a request, processes it, and then sends back the requested information or a data back to the mobile application. The return message, here it is called as response. The entire communication between the application and a server over web is facilitated by HTTP. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. The protocol that defines a set of rules how the data is being transmitted over the internet or the web. In addition to HTTP, we also have HTTPS, which is a secured version of HTTP that encrypts a message between the client or an application to a server or from a server to the mobile application so that the two parties remain private and secure, so that the communication between the two parties remain private and secure. We understood that HTTP or HTTPS is a protocol that defines a set of rules for two parties to communicate over internet or web. But what are these rules? How we can see them? This can be easily explained by clearly examining the structure of request and response. These protocols that defines a clear structure for the request and response, how it should look like. If we break down the entire HTTP request, it will have an address, then it will have an HTTP method, it has an header and a body. The first one is address, which is also called as an URL or URI. The full form is Uniform Resource Locator or an identifier, which basically an address of the resource that you are requesting it, which is a combination of a server address and a path to a particular resource. In this API, basically we are using api.weatherapi.com, which is the address of the server, and current.json is a resource that we are requesting here, right? So which is called as a resource here, which is a resource here. Second one is about the method. The method basically tells what kind of operation that we are performing with the particular resource. In this case, we are performing a post request. That means we are trying to create a new record, or you are trying to update the existing record on a server. The commonly used methods are the get, which is to retrieve the data from a server. The post is to create a new record or to modify the existing record on a server. Put is basically to update the content of the existing record on a server. Delete is to basically delete already existing record from the server. Headers are Headers are some metadata or some special information that is needed by the server in order to understand the request and to process the request. If you see in this case, we are passing a header as a content type, which is of JSON format, that we are telling the server that the message body from the request is of type JSON, and please use the JSON parsing method to parse this data. Sometimes the communication uh, between the client and server are protected. In such cases, you need to send some keys in order to perform the authorization, which can be a basic username or a password, which can be a personal access token, or it can be an OAuth token that is used for the communication that allows the client to communicate with the server. These are basically headers are basically some special information or a metadata. The body is an actual information that is sent to the server. It's actual data that is being sent to the server. Typically, the body is used in request methods or like post, put, or a patch. In case of a get, we generally don't use the body, which has been empty. In this example, what we are sending to the server is about the geolocation. We are trying to post a request with the geographical location. For example, if you see, we are sending the coordinate in terms of latitude and longitude, or the location as a London and things like that, to get the data from this particular weather data from these particular locations. Okay, and the body the content of this body can be of format like JSON or an XML. If it is a JSON, then we will specify like application slash JSON. If it is an XML, we specify application slash XML. After processing the request, the server sends a response back to the client, and the structure of the response is something like this, which has got a status code followed by the status description, header, and a body. Status code is a 3-digit code that indicates the outcome of the request. Some of the common codes are 200 OK, where the request is successful. 404 is an resource not found. That means you are trying to access some request which is not available in the server. 500 is something wrong in a server. This is an internal error server. So I will take you through some comprehensive list of status code at the end of this video. The header, like how we have a request header, we also have an response headers, which are basically a metadata. Which also, if you see some of the commonly used metadata are the content type or the content length. Here basically it tells the response, the body that server sends back to the client is of type either JSON or an XML. It also says how many bytes this body contains, right? Response body contains. Okay, and that is not documented here. This is here it is only shows a body. The body is basically the content of a response, which can be in the form of HTML or a JSON or an image or etc etc. Sometimes you can also have an empty body. For example, you are trying to create a new record using a post, then you will get a response code as 201 that says that your request has been created, but there is no body that has been sent, right? So these are all the sometimes there can also be a body content which can be an empty. All right. So for the last request that we sent in the last slide, we have seen the structure of the request, where we have sent a request to the server, post request. In response to this post request, the server has sent this particular data, which is in a JSON format, which basically contains a lot of information like the location for which the weather data is being sent, what is the coordinate, what is the region, and basically if you see, it completely tells about the weather data like what is the temperature in centigrade, in the Fahrenheit, uh, for how long this data is valid. Is it for a week or is it for a day? and the wind speeds and etc etc. This is how basically the response structure looks like. Let us understand the HTTP request structure in terms of an post as an analogy. If you When you are posting a letter, you need to write an address which is equivalent to the address that is explained like URL or URI in the request. You are specifying the address to whom you are sending basically the letter. Then you will have to apply a postcard or certain kind of a barcode over your letter that basically is equivalent to an header. These are some extra information that is needed to process your letter. Then you are putting your letter into this envelope, right, which where there is an address written, where you have put the stamp, right. So this basically contains the information that you want to send it to your friend or your relative, here which is equivalent to the request body that you are sending to a server. Hope you clearly understood the structure of request and response with this analogy. Let us go through the different HTTP methods. For this demonstration, I have used a API that manages the user details. All the resources are managed under a resource group called user. Okay, the first one is a GET request, which basically is used for retrieve a certain data from the server. If you see this example here, we are trying to um, get a user record 123. That means we are going to retrieve the information about the user with an ID 123. Okay. So when you basically hit this, when hit the API, uh, the server responds you with a set of data which can basically look like this, right. So here the user has an ID called 123. His first name is John, his last name, email, etc etc, right. It basically manages the complete detail about a user. So if you want to retrieve the detail of an user, you can get this via the method called get method, where you have to along with your server URL, you also need to specify what resource you are looking for. There may be a multiple user record. There may be an user with the user ID 1, 2, 3, etc. Right? So you will have to specify which user information that you are looking for. And if you want to get the entire users, whatever the records that are created in the server, you want to get information about all the users, then you can specify by just like get slash users. Don't put the last 1 2 3. If you put slash user, you're trying to get all the user records from the server. Okay, the post is basically used to create a new record in the server. So if you want to add a new user into your server database, then you can do it via the post. A typical example like onboarding a new employee. New employee has joined your organization and you want to put his details into the employee database, then you can use it via the post request. The put request is basically to change or change the information. Okay, it is basically to update the current resource already existing the data with the new data. The typical example could be your employees the first name has changed, so you want to update, then you can use it via the put resource. The delete, basically it deletes a um, particular record from the server. The example is if I want to delete this user record 123, I can just by giving the server address slash user slash 123 with a method as a delete, it basically deletes the complete record. The typical example could be the employee has resigned from his current organization, then you can delete his information from the employee database using the delete command. The patch command is only used to change a partial information, right? Partial information of the user. For example, if you want to change his address, for example, if he is in the same street and his zip code has been changed, then you can do it via the patch request. Partially it changes the data, updates the resource with the new data. Okay, there is a difference between the put and the patch. Patch put is basically to update the you can update the entire record with the put, but with the patch you can only update a small record, right? Only if you want to change only the zip code, then you can use a patch. If you want to change the multiple information, then you can basically use the put instead of patch. Head is another method, but it is not commonly used. If you want to retrieve only the header information, if you want to retrieve only the header information without a response body, then you can use a head. It is similar to get, but get basically gets the header as well as the body. But if you don't want a body, only the header, then you can use the head information. uh, yeah, so for example, if you have an API, right? If you have an API and if you don't know what are the methods that API supports, then you can use option as an method. If you send an option, then then basically if you say slash user 123, it basically uh, tells you what are the operation that you can perform with this user. Basically it will return you like is get operation is possible, post operation is possible, delete operation is possible, things like that. Basically different types of options that are associated with a particular resource can be retrieved via the option. The trace is basically used to trace the information of the particular API call. It basically gives you the requested information for further debugging. Let us understand the differences between the post, put and patch. If you see here I am using the post command, the post method at the for the resource user. That means under the resource block called user, I am trying to create a new record where I am basically passing the body as request body as the first name as John, the last name as Dio, and email is something like this. And in response to this, I get an 201 response which says that the record has been created, and this is an ID of, and the body is something like this. This is basically an ID of the resource that is being created, and then this is the first name, and this is the last name, and this is an email. If you want to retrieve this information using a get command, then basically you'll have to use get slash user slash 123. If you give that, then you will get this information back from the server. As I explained, the put is basically used to update the existing record. If you want to update already existing record with the one or more fields, okay, many fields, then you can basically use the basically the put method. If you see in the earlier example, the first name was John, then last name was Dio, and email was something like this. I in the put request, I am going to change these details. I will keep the first name as same, but I will basically change the last name and the email. Here the multiple records that I am going to change, and my endpoint would be something like user slash 123 with the method as a put, and it basically changes the server basically changes the record, and it sends me back 200 OK as a response code, and with the message body as something like this. And if you see the record, user record has been changed here. So with the put, at the same time you can change the multiple records for already created record by the post, right? Okay, in case of patch, if you see, I want to only change the email ID of the user with the user ID 123. My request will be something like patch users 123, and my request body will be change this email, and I will get a response from the server as 200 OK with the body as something like this. If you see here, the email ID has been changed. These are the basic difference between post, put, and patch. Again, I want to reiterate. Post is to create a the new record. The put is basically to update already created account with multiple items that is going to change. But patch is to change one particular item of already created record. Okay, these are some of the commonly used response codes. 200 OK is uh, the request is successful, server has processed, and the request is success. Example, the get record, or the put method, or a patch method, or a delete. You just get a 200 as OK. 201 basically associate with the post method. When you try to create a new record, if the new record is created in the server successfully, then you will get an record as 201, which is successful. 204 no content. This request was successful, but there are no data to send it back. 400, these 400 series are basically the client issues. If there are some client issues, then you will get a set of 400 errors, start with 4. And if there are some server issues, it will be start with the 5, right? And all these 200 which are right, which are basically the successful operations. Okay, 400 bad request. Suppose you had to call an API in a manner that is specified in the API document. In case if you do some error in calling the API, you will get a 400 bad request. That means you are not calling the API properly. Okay, due to the invalid syntax. Okay, there been a certain syntax that has been said how to call this API, which is basically specified in a API specification document. When a certain the API developers who develop this set of APIs, then they basically write down the specification about the API, how to use it, what are the parameters to pass, and what kind of response it gets, and things like that. If you are not following these guidelines, then you will get a 400 errors. 401 is unauthorized. If there is some security, or if the connection is basically secured, that means server poses certain kind of an security to authenticate. Then if you are not passing that authorization properly, then you will get a 400 error. If a particular request is bounded by an OAuth2 token, or an personal access token, or it may be in username and password, and in the request, in the get request, for example, you are trying to get retrieve a certain resource which is basically secured, and it needs a kind of the password, username and password to retrieve that data. And if in your request you are not passing these information, then you will get a 401 error. Forbidden, that means server understands your request, but it is refuses to authorize this. You are basically forbidden to perform this operation. 404 is basically resource not found. You are trying to access the resource which is not there. For example, if you send something like get users slash -1, or user slash 999, where this 999 record that is not existing in the server, then it says that you are trying to request some resource information, but it is not available. 405 is method not allowed. That is, you are trying to perform a put method on a particular API, and if that method is not available for that API, this also you can find it out from the API specification, what are the methods that can be used for this particular API. And if you're trying to use that method, I also talked about the option, right? Option commands, if you use against the API, it basically gives a list of options or an operation that you can perform with the particular API. If you are, for example, if the post is not available for API and you are trying to use a post method, then it says that this method is not available. 500 is internal server error. There is some server error that is occurred, or server is down, or it is not responding to your request. It is not understanding your request, or it is not able to not. It is not question of understanding. It is not able to respond to your request. In such cases, basically you will get 500 error. 502 bad gateway. The server receives an invalid response from upstream server. Okay. Yeah, so if there is an upstream server where it is associated with the server, and if your server is not getting a proper response from an upstream server, then it gives basically a bad gateway. That means you're trying to access some resource from a server, but server needs additional information for this resource from another server. So it is basically connecting to another server to get this information. In such cases, if this transaction that fails from the upstream, we call it basically as an upstream system, then it is upstream systems are systems from where we retrieve the data. Downstream systems are systems where we send the data to, right? So trying to receive some information from the upstream system and it is not available, then you will get a bad gateway error. 503 is service unavailable. The server is currently unable to handle your request. Usually due to it is being overloaded, or it is down for the maintenance. Hope you have enjoyed learning HTTP with me. Thank you for your support. Please keep supporting my videos. Please subscribe. In the upcoming videos, I will try to make you understand the basics of Postman. I'll start with simple installation and the basic concepts of Postman. And this journey will continue till how we can completely do the manual testing and the automated testing to certain extent with the Postman.